The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body.
Each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government.
Of course, that's not necessarily the situation here in Indiana, with no direct ballot initiative on the issue for voters. This week, a court again upheld our state's abortion ban, with that issue being a big topic of conversation at the presidential debate on Tuesday. Let's talk about it now with our panel. Joining us here in studio this week, we have former state party chair for the Indiana Democrats, Robin Winston, along with Tony Samuel, who was vice chair for the Indiana Trump campaign in 2016, and two former state lawmakers, Democrat Terry Austin and Republican Mike Murphy. Terry, I'll start with you. We already know there will not be a second debate between Trump and Harris. What do you make of this one and only debate between Vice President Harris and former President Trump? Did she meet the moment in your view?
Well, let me use the words of Karl Rove, the Republican strategist, who said she was calm, confident, strong, and focused, and that Donald Trump was angry, and this debate was a catastrophic train wreck for him. I think she demonstrated to the American public that she has not only the intellect and the character to be president, but also has some compassion and has a strong grasp of the issues.
Mike, where does this leave things now as we move closer to the election, particularly for Republicans like Mike Pence, who said he wasn't going to endorse his former running mate, or Todd Young, who told reporters that asked about the debate this week that he wasn't going to comment on any of this until after the election. What do you think he and former Vice President Pence thought of this debate this past week?
I think they probably chuckled just like the leaders of the major countries around the world did. I mean, this was like a Saturday Night Live skit that you just could not make up. It was like Saturday Night Live for real. I mean, we're talking about the future of the free world, and we have Donald Trump talking about immigrants eating cats and dogs. It was just amazing.
Let's move on to Tony here now. You, I imagine, have a different view on all of this, but are you concerned that the former president put himself in a bad light here during the debate on
First
Tuesday?
of all, I feel like Trump, because it's 3-on-1 here, it was 3-on-1 the other night. But what he did was he stuck to the policy, he was substantive in his answers. He was Trump.
But he went off on a lot of these tangents.
And she kept attacking him. She kept attacking him, which was her strategy, and we knew that. And he defended himself because he was allowed to do that. When you do that, you might come across looking angry because you want to make sure that you rebut what she just lied about. And there were
you think
plenty
he did
of
look
lies.
angry?
He's even said that he's angry about what's happened to the country with the maybe 20 million illegal immigrants coming across over the last 3 years, with the fentanyl deaths across the country, with the economy and the inflation, 20% increase in inflation over the last 3 years, while Harrison and Biden have been in office. So yeah, he's angry. A lot of us are angry. Okay. But it's the policy where she lacks substance, and it showed again. It showed at the convention, it showed in the interview with CNN, and it showed again the other night.
Abortion, a big topic too, as we mentioned a few minutes ago in this debate. Robin, what's your response here from across the aisle?
I think that Donald Trump showed who he really was in that debate, and it was devoid of very much in policy. Kamala Harris showed why she's vice president, first of all. She ran a tremendous debate sequence and game from the beginning and coming out to shake his hand, which I don't think a lot of people expected. I don't think he would have shaken her hand anyway. But I also think, keep in mind, immediately after that, Dan, 17,000 people in Greensboro, North Carolina last night. There have been constant crowd building, number of volunteers. They told me in Pennsylvania, 60% of the people that have called in and want to volunteer had never volunteered before.
All right, so let's talk about the potential down-ballot impact as we look at some of those polling numbers that we mentioned earlier. These are internal polling numbers on some of the races in Indiana. First, the presidential race. That poll also tested that question, and it showed former President Trump ahead by 10 in Indiana. It's the same poll we mentioned earlier that has Senator Braun ahead by only 2 in the race for governor, and Todd Rokita just 3 points ahead of Destiny Wells in the race for Attorney General. Tony, do you find those numbers concerning, or does that mere 10-point gap in the presidential race suggest these numbers might be off the mark, since the former president has won here by about 20 points in the past?
Yeah, exactly. He won by 20 points in 2016. He won by 17 points in 2020. That lifts all other boats. As far as Destiny Wells, she did this 2 years ago in her race against Diego Morales for Secretary of State. She released a poll that said she was up by 4 points. She lost by 20. She only got 40%. That's what's going to happen here. Rokita's in good shape. He's a strong candidate. Same with Mike Braun at the Braun-Beckwith ticket.
Terry, what do you make of these numbers and what we could see here in Indiana in November?
Well, I can tell you that in talking to both Democrats and Republicans out there in the field in my community, there's a lot of ticket splitting that's going to go on. And people are not enamored with Mike Braun, and they're particularly fearful of Micah Beckwith. They have had enough of Todd Rokita, so it's not a surprise to me that these races are so close.
Okay, and again, we'll have some polling numbers out next week as well. Meantime, today we're also talking about the ongoing controversy in Indy with Mayor Joe Hogsett answering questions this week about the sexual harassment allegations involving his former chief of staff and the council investigations now underway. He held that briefing with reporters this week, just days after saying this at a rally last weekend.
I ain't running for nothing. I'm running from things, but I ain't running for nothing.
The mayor's office later said he was making a joke there, but his comments drew a lot of criticism from council members who thought it wasn't appropriate. Here's what the mayor said about it on Thursday.
Well, I did say it in jest, and it was not intended to have any reference to the topic that we're discussing today.
So the mayor says he has no plans to step down despite some calls for his resignation. Mike, what do you think? Was he out of line here?
At that rally? Oh, I'm not sure what he was doing. I mean, I hate to quote Trump. I don't like to quote Trump, but what was he saying? Did he even know what he was saying? Was he in a condition to know what he was saying at that rally? I have no idea. But one thing I am very happy for is that the council, Democrats and Republicans, have voted to investigate. But I think they need to take it one step further and have an independent law firm from outside the state of Indiana that doesn't do business with the city. That would make it much more credible. But I do applaud them for what they've done so far.
Robin, what were your thoughts on all of this? Did the mayor make a bad situation worse with those comments last weekend?
No, because he was right back at his desk in the office to handle any questions media had. Look, this guy's been a United States attorney appointed by the president. He understands right from wrong. Let's let this thing believe in our judicial system and let it work its way out in an investigation by a bipartisan city county council member.
That investigation will now get started at the council level. We'll continue to follow it. Coming up next here, talking about increasing voter turnout in Indiana, particularly among younger voters, and how one group is trying to get them to the polls this year when we come back.